Greetings, friends. This is Reverend Alice from the First United Church of Christ in Millvale, and I want to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas. This is Christmas Eve as I'm speaking to you, and we will be having our service at the church at 7:30. I love to share with you. I love to see that there are people here joining us on the internet, and I really appreciate it. Now, I was going to ask you if you're ready for Christmas. But I think it's going to come ready or not at this point. We are ready. For us, my family, we finally put up the Christmas tree. We use our old traditional ornaments. They hold a lot of memories. I can't imagine that you can get through the holiday without having remembrance pour into your heart. I wonder what your favorite memory from Christmas, maybe a Christmas of your childhood, is. Perhaps opening each special little door on the Advent calendar, excited to be one day closer to Christmas. I can imagine the tree lit up on Christmas morning. I can picture the sights and the sounds of the day as if it were yesterday, but it wasn't, because the journey of life moves forward. This Advent season, I've been thinking once again about our journey of faith to Bethlehem. I do that every year. I think of our Advent season as a journey we take together in our hearts to that precious place. During my prayers and pondering, as I prepared for tonight, something leapt up in my heart. It's something that on Christmas Eve could get lost. I began to consider the beginning of our Christmas story. I mean, when the angel Gabriel, after all of those generations of waiting, finally arrives in the home of a simple girl named Mary, who's engaged to Joseph. Mary, whose name can mean rebellion, was given an opportunity she must have heard about all of her life, something that would change everything. She never expected it to be her when the angel came and had news for Mary that she would be the one to bear the promised Messiah, the Son of God, the Savior. Of course, young Mary asked all the right questions since she was a young girl. How can this be? And Gabriel gave us some of the most important words in all of Scripture, and therefore in all of life, and therefore in all of time. The angel said, "Nothing will be impossible with God." This very same sentence appears in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. Both times it announces a promised child, first the child of Sarah and Abraham, and then the child of Mary. The promised Messiah was coming through Mary, because nothing will be impossible with God. This season, I wanted to hold on to those words. Nothing will be impossible with God. We could write them on our Christmas cards. We could carve them in the sand near the ocean. We could embroider them on our pillows. Nothing will be impossible with God. Children seem to know that this is true, that God makes all things possible. They know. It's the truth when things seem dark or frightening. Nothing is impossible with God. With God is the important part, isn't it? And so I read those words from the book of Luke, when Mary must make a decision, when she cannot truly understand and yet still has a choice. Even blessings may be hard, but don't fear. Nothing will be impossible with God. And so those words were deep within my heart when I do something else that I do every year. I know it sounds odd, but at some point, every Advent, I imagine that I could just take all of you from here and we could all go together and we could be in Bethlehem. It would be, of course, in my imagination, but our spirits can make that seem real. In my imaginings, we could take that evening walk together toward one particular spot where Christians have set apart a small cavern to commemorate the place where Jesus was born. For centuries, Christians have believed it is the location where the manger stood, because the truth is that it must be an overwhelming experience just to be there. Each person who longs to be near to that spot kneels down to enter the grotto and then reaches out and touches that small space made holy by our hopes and by our God's love. Bethlehem itself is just southeast of Jerusalem. And for many years, there has been a walking pilgrimage to the city we long to see. If we were there, even in our imagination, we could hold our candles to light the darkness, just as we will tonight. We could sing into the dazzling night. Can you imagine it? Yet in our hearts, we are on our quest to Bethlehem. So we are drawn here tonight to this holy place, a place of worship, a place of love. We return to that story, to that manger, so unexpected, so filled with possibilities. However, even as I imagine our journey, you and I both know that tonight it won't happen. Not literally. Someone sent me a newspaper headline this week. The Christians will not be allowed in Bethlehem. There will be no church services. You see, Bethlehem is in the West Bank, and we wouldn't be welcome. It's a difficult place. It's so complicated. Even if we long to be there, even if we could, there's war and there's conflict and there's differences. There's danger, and our hearts break from it all. But before we weep for our losses, let's remember that the Bethlehem today is more like the one that Joseph and Mary encountered than the beautiful one presented under our Christmas trees or in our homes. But you already know the whole story. Even before I could say it, our Christmas story is alive in our hearts, just waiting. When the Holy Family made it from the north down to the city of David, which is Bethlehem, there was no place for them. But there was a stable inhabited by animals. There was a place that the baby was born in the midst of the dangers of the world, a baby unnoticed. Perhaps the simple shepherds knew, but in those moments, in a stable in Bethlehem, under the wondrous bright star, God entered our world. A fact too amazing. And now everything was different. And yet the sound of a newborn child wrapped in cloths, laid in a manger, was the only indication that the universe, the God of all creation, offered us the most awesome surprise. Everything is different because of that night long ago. As you know, Mary and Joseph didn't go home after Bethlehem. No one who comes to the manger ever returns the same way. If we truly hear the story we tell tonight, we journey forward not alone and not afraid, but we're changed because we take the manger with us in our hearts. We open ourselves to it as it surprises us with love and hope and grace and God. I remember one of the first times I heard those words spoken by the angel, the words that began our story. I was a young pastor at a hospital where there had been a death. A woman passed on in the night, and her son, who had just graduated college, was there. And he told me that his mother had been ill with a rare brain cancer for years. In the end, for the last few years, she couldn't respond. She had lost the ability to speak. And so that was very hard for him. Late the night before her death, the hospital called him to let him know that his mother was near the end. And he rushed to be by her side. And he sat in the dark, his head leaning over near his mother. and sleep began to overcome him. He must have dozed off when he felt a gentle hand brushing over his hair as his head rested on the bed. He opened his eyes to see his mother sitting up and looking at him. And shockingly, she greeted him, although he hadn't heard her voice for over a year. In the time they had together, he told her that he graduated from college, that he missed her, that he loved her. And she told him how happy her life was because he was her son, her only son. The young man began to think he was dreaming. And so he went and got a nurse to come into the room. The young man and his mom talked and held each other and said goodbye and wept together. The young man eventually fell asleep again, and when he awoke, his mother's life in this world was over. When I was there, we prayed and he cried, and what a gift he had been given. At one point, I looked over to see the nurse, and she must have guessed my question. She told me it happened exactly the way the young man said. Then she kindly took his hand. I had hold of his other hand, and she said, "Nothing is impossible with God. Nothing. It may not look the way we expect, but God is leading us. God will always amaze and surprise us. A surprise implies something different, a new day, a new beginning, perhaps an intrusion. So often I hear about the way that the church used to be, and it was, but everything was. I wonder how much we have lost by not hearing those words enough. Nothing will be impossible with God. You notice the future tense, will be, nothing. Life goes on, changes. We need to believe in something true and something holy. We need it to go forward in life. We need it to go forward in life. We need to share it with the generation after us. It makes the holy night no less important or holy because we change and move forward as God calls us to do. We need not long for the past. God is creating new stories, new beginnings. And even in the midst of our traditional story of God coming to us, the adventure is just beginning. I saw a video on YouTube this week about a young boy, maybe 6 years old. He was from England. He was excitedly telling his mother that he'd gotten a very important role in the Christmas play. He said the role was classic, but he wanted her to guess what it was. His eyes were shining and his smile lit up as he waited for her to guess. And she began guessing. Joseph? No. A shepherd? No. Innkeeper? No. Wise man? No. He kept saying, no, it's the most important. It's classic. She finally gave up, and he proudly announced that he was the door. His mother asked if he was happy, and he was bubbling with excitement. The door to the stable. I love that video. And as I looked at the little guy's enthusiasm, I thought about being the door. Could we be the ones to open the door to the stable, to reveal the mystery of the greatest night the world has known? Could that open door change everything? Could an open door reveal the manger, a holy baby, and could it change the world again? Are we opening the door? We can, because nothing will be impossible with God. Let's imagine then that by next year, that road to Bethlehem will be open once more. And who knows, we could be on it. Well, if only in our hearts. It's Christmas and the door is open. And so anything can happen. May your Christmas journey to Bethlehem and its surprises be the place in which new discoveries and new opportunities await. In the midst of the darkness of this world, don't give up. This new year, when a challenge confronts you, when a surprise intrudes, take it as an invitation, as an opportunity, as doors through which we can pass, as doors that we can open to new life. For in this season and on this very night is our God to be found, because nothing will be impossible with God. Merry Christmas, friends. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I hope you can join us. First United Church of Christ in Millvale. We're at 425 North Avenue. And have a blessed evening. God bless you.